Good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Harwell, Assistant Superintendent of Bedford County Schools. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Welcome to Bedford County. We appreciate you all for being here to provide your public comments and input for Tennessee's school letter grades in the accountability system. At this time, I would like to introduce the Tennessee Department of Education's Chief of Staff, Chelsea Crawford. She will be guiding today's discussion. Everyone give Chelsea a big round of applause.
Hey folks, thank you so very much for coming out tonight. I am going to tell you this is our 10th of 10 town halls. I appreciate how many folks are showing out in Shelbyville, so deep appreciation for you coming to participate in this conversation today. We are here to talk about a very important topic. It's important to us at the agency. It's important clearly to all of you who have volunteered your time to be here. It's important to parents, to the public, to our teachers, to our students, to our district and school administrators. And it's all about a law that was passed a few years ago that we are going to be implementing for the very first time this fall. And what the law does is it calls for our agency to create a rating system for schools. And that rating system is going to generate an A, B, C, D, or F letter grade for a school. So just in the way that you see students bring home a report card with a letter grade in a particular subject area, this rating system will apply an A, B, C, D, or F letter grade to schools in Tennessee. And of course, as we embark on implementation of this law for the very first time, it's been passed a number of years ago, we wanted to make sure that we are developing a system that will provide really meaningful information to parents and families and the public all across the state. We also want to make sure that this rating system measures the impact of a school in as fair of a way as possible. So we've been going around the state. I mentioned this is the 10th of 10 town halls that we have had, really encouraging the public to join us in these conversations, contribute input on what is important to you when it comes to measuring a school's success, measuring their impact, measuring their performance. And the way that this event is actually going to work, it's a public town hall, so we're here to hear from you. And before we get to hearing from you this evening, I'm going to talk just for a few minutes to ensure that everyone in the room has kind of the same baseline understanding of the topic at hand. And then we'll move into a period of the town hall where we actually have folks like you come onto the microphone and give us your input and your 2 cents. Before I start talking, I want to call your attention up to the QR codes that exist on the slide. They were also on the check-in table when you got here this evening. If you already know that you want to jump into the conversation this evening, you are encouraged to scan that QR code, go ahead and sign up. But I also will let you know we have microphones, and so there will be lots of opportunity for you to just simply raise your hand. If you decide later on in the conversation that yes, you do want to provide some input, we'll be able to give you that opportunity. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I mentioned that this is about implementing a law that was passed a number of years ago. It was passed back in 2016, intended to be implemented for the first time in 2017-2018 school year. Now, if we think back to that time, we can remember that Tennessee was experiencing some challenges with the online administration of our assessment, TCAP. And what that meant was the data related to TCAP was off limits in terms of use in an A through F system for that period of time. You fast forward a couple of years, and of course we remember too well the pandemic and the impacts of the pandemic. It also created some delays in the implementation of this law because data, again, was kind of off limits for use in a rating system like this. So this year, we know that we have lots of good data generated by our assessment. We have public, we have parents, we have legislators who passed this law who are ready for it to be implemented. And so we're excited to be able to do that for the first time this fall. It is a challenging topic. It's a complicated topic, and it's also technical at times. And so what we're going to do this evening is really encourage you to think through the implementation of this letter grade system, where we can imagine later this fall, we have a website that goes up and it says ABC Elementary or ABC High School. And right alongside all of the information about that school is the letter grade generated by the school's data. We really want this to be able to communicate to parents and families something meaningful about the impact that the school is having, the success that that campus is seeing as a result of the planning and supports it's putting in place for its students. So, law was passed a number of years ago, and this is when we are going to implement for the very first time. I want to make sure to put up some things on this slide to give you examples of the types of things that could be included in the letter grade calculation. So when you think about a math problem, you know we've got opportunities to include different things to equal an output. This is some of the examples of inputs into the letter grade calculation. You're going to see up on this slide there are two icons that are colored in red. The rest are colored in blue. Those two icons that are red, you'll see academics and growth. Those are required by law to be included in the calculation for letter grades. So when we think about academics, I want to explain just briefly what that is. We know that when we send our children to school, we have expectations for what they will learn. Tennessee teachers and others come together to develop rigorous academic standards, and that's really an expectation of what we believe a student should know in a particular subject area in a particular grade. Their progress towards meeting or exceeding those expectations is a measure of their academic success and achievement. Growth is the other one you'll see up here in red. It is also required by law to be included in the calculation. Growth is a little bit different than achievement. And so if you think about the academic standards that we set for children in a particular subject area at a particular grade, we know that they may meet expectations, exceed expectations, or achieve proficiency in those expectations. They may not. So regardless of where a student may be on a proficiency scale, they still have an opportunity to grow. We know that when students go into our classrooms with our teachers, every day our teachers are looking to help that student improve, no matter where they are in terms of proficiency. And so that's the difference between that academic achievement component and growth. A little bit different, both are very important, and both are required to be part of the calculation. Other things can be included, and we are going to give you a little bit of an example. All the things that you see up here in blue have been talked about as part of this letter grade system and other accountability measures in our state and at the federal level. These are samples of things that could or should be included in a letter grade system, but this is not exhaustive. It's not comprehensive. And in fact, I hope you all give us some good ideas about some of the other things that you believe are important when we think about measuring a school's success and performance and impact. What are those things that matter to you as Tennesseans, matter to you as a parent, as a member of the community, as a taxpayer? Because what we as an agency are charged to implement when we go through and implement this law is including academic achievement, including growth, and other indicators that can be determined by this public engagement period. You're going to see over here on the left side of your screen, there are two examples of the types of indicators we've talked about previously: chronic absenteeism, English language proficiency. I've put these two up here specifically to kind of give us an example of the types of things that can vary dramatically from school to school, even from school to school within the same school district. When we know in terms of absenteeism, students are not in front of a teacher in a classroom as much as we hope they would be. They're not absorbing the learning that we hope they can. And so that's kind of an example of some of the contextual factors that could be included to differentiate within a system. Similarly, in English language proficiency, we know when a school has high concentrations of students who have not yet learned English, they're actually trying to access instruction and content in English language and learn English at the same time. That's a piece of contextual information that can tell us a little bit more about how that school is doing. And so those are two examples of some of the types of things we've thought about, talked about as it relates to this letter grade calculation in the past. There's also opportunity for us to look at other types of indicators, especially those that could apply at an elementary, middle, or high school level. On the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see two examples of things that could or should be included for high school indicators. We've heard along these town halls lots of input about what happens to our students after they graduate high school. We know we want them to be ready to be successful in life, whether they're going to college or career or the military or some other pathway. But there are some measures that we can look at and actually look at data to see how ready that student might be to be successful in their chosen pathway. Graduation rate, of course, is one that we could think of. But other things like ACT scores, participation in advanced coursework, early post-secondary opportunities. Those are some of the kinds of things that might be applicable at a high school level that wouldn't necessarily be applicable in an elementary school space. On the elementary school side of things, if you think about our littlest learners and the things we hope and aspire for them to achieve, we think about things like reading and math and developing those really foundational skills that will help prepare them to learn for the rest of their educational journey. So there can be inclusion of indicators in this letter grade system that differ between an elementary, middle, or high school. We could think about things for subgroups of students. When we have gone around for other town halls, we've heard a lot of information about socioeconomic circumstances, students who might have disabilities. We've heard about minority subgroups of students, and we want to be able to hear from you input you might have about how to spotlight really, really good success, even if not carried through the entire campus, but really strong success with a particular subgroup. Those are some of the types of things that we would like to hear from you about tonight. So as we go to the next slide, you are going to see some questions that are really just kind of prompts or probes to get you thinking about the types of indicators, components that could or should be a part of the letter grade system. What we want to hear from you about is what are your priorities? If you can kind of fast forward in your mind to later on this fall, when again you see our agency implement this law and generate letter grades for schools, what should that letter grade system represent? When we see an A or a B or a C, D or F, what are the assumptions that folks might make when they see that letter grade? Are the calculations that we develop in line with those kind of assumptions? Do we want to create a system that looks a little different? Bottom line, we really want to make sure that, again, this system is meaningful and conveys information to parents and the public in as clear and understandable of a way as possible. But we also want to make sure that it's going to measure schools, which can be wonderfully unique and different from each other, in as fair of a way as possible. So that's what we're going to go and hear from you all tonight. At this point in time, we're going to move into the public comment section of this event. So before we do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it's going to work. Folks who would like to sign up, please feel free to use that QR code. You might have signed up on the sheet when you got here earlier this evening. But everyone's going to have a few minutes to speak, and we probably will have time to hear from you multiple times if you would like to chime in tonight. But we do want to make sure to give everyone who wants to participate a chance to do so. So I'm going to call a name, and we're going to bring a microphone over to you just to make sure everyone can hear your comment. I'll start your timer for 3 minutes, and I'm going to step away from the microphone. You can share your comment then. And as your timer starts ticking down, you've got about 30 seconds left. I'm going to step back up to the podium, and that's kind of my visual cue for you that it's just about time for your turn to end and for the next person to begin. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and start the public comment period. Okay, so first up, we are going to go to Stephen Blessing. Stephen, if you would raise your hand, sir. I see you. We are going to bring you a microphone. When you get the microphone, if you would just state your name and go ahead and get started. I'll start the timer when you start.
Again, my name is Stephen Blessing, and I have a booming voice, apparently. Just a few things I want to share in terms of graduation rate that you mentioned. Now there's a distinction between federal and state. I think it'd be better for state to be used instead of federal. I'm glad to hear that achievement and growth are both being used according to state law. I wonder about weighting and, if there's going to be a priority given to one or the other. I'm also curious how this new accountability system is going to be superimposed with existing accountability systems. We have reward schools, priority schools. We have all those identifications. I wonder then if you have a reward school who ends up with a D or an F. So I'm just curious to see how that's going to work out. I've noticed you mentioned with all public schools that academics and growth, and then there are schools who don't have such things, pre-K2. So I'm wondering how they're going to be graded when they don't have achievement or growth data. I'm also curious about any patterns that may have arisen from the 10 different town halls, if you're about consistency or dissonance in feedback that has been shared. And I'm wondering how much the public comments that we have contribute to developing the formula. I mean, it can't be completely upon us. Something's going on in the background, and wonder when the formula will be shared and when all that will be available.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your comments, and I'm going to unpack a little bit of the questions that you had in your remarks. So first and foremost, you mentioned something about graduation rate and kind of the differences between state rate and federal rate. Yes, sir, that is the case. They do look a little bit different in the way that those graduation rates are calculated. I appreciate you pulling that apart, actually, for the folks in this room, and appreciate you kind of your recommendation of one versus another. The other thing you asked about is kind of process and what happens with what we're doing tonight, with the other things we've heard at town halls. And essentially what we're doing is gathering input from folks all across the state in a public forum, giving lots of folks opportunity to come and talk to us, in real life, like we're doing tonight. We're also collecting input from an email address, so folks can email us at any point in time. Input is part of this conversation. I mentioned that this is the last one, so we've done 10. We're just about finished. And after this, what is going to happen is the department will be convening some working groups, diverse working groups who are kind of a mix of different stakeholders. So you can imagine all the people in Tennessee and all the different kind of roles and stakeholders that we have. Those groups will be comprised of a diverse perspective. So you can think about parents, teachers, principals, accountability staff at a district leaders, legislators. There's lots of different types of folks who have input, who have perspective that they want to share. So those working groups will come together for a series of meetings, together review the public comment that has been generated by this process, and essentially deliberate and say, okay, this is what we've heard. This is how we recognize that folks are asking for prioritization, perhaps, amongst the different components, and then together kind of generate the actual calculation. That would be shared, of course, with districts and schools ahead of the publication of the results of that calculation, which would be the ABCDF. All of that process, just like these public town halls, will be posted on our website, available to you. So when we have a working group come together for a meeting, you will be able to watch it online. You'll be able to download the PowerPoint and the agenda and still continue to provide your comment and input. We do want this to be something that's very transparent, but we also want it to be done in very close collaboration with folks all across the state, because it means something for our schools, and it certainly is something that is important to all of us. And so that's kind of the next steps of this process. After working groups, you'll see the publication of the calculation, publication of the results, and that will come at the state report card release, which is in November. Thank you for your comments. We are going to go next to Glenn Forsey. If you would raise your hand, I see you right here. We're going to bring a microphone to you. And if you would, please just state your name. Go ahead and get started, and I'll start your timer.
Thank you, ma'am. Glenn Forsey, Bedford County Board of Education. I've been on the board for 18 years, in my 19th year now. It seems like every 3 to 5 years, there's the newest, latest, greatest solving of an educational issue. Our superintendent a number of years ago, we had worked diligently as a district, made a lot of accomplishments, and the state took a step and he said, guess what? They just moved the goal line. One thing that I would request of the State Department of Education is to give us a consistent goal line where everybody is moving towards the same goal. In football, you cross the goal, you score. We're not in competition in academics. Somebody's going to be 1, somebody's going to be 148. With this, it gives us a level playing field, but give us a knowable destination, a doable destination. I know there's a lot of things going into making this equation work. We don't need a calculus equation. We need something that we can understand, that's knowable, doable, and consistent. I understand there's constant monitoring and adjusting. That's part of the educational and business process. But keep the eye on the goal line and don't let the goal line keep moving. And flexibility on the local level. What works in Shelby County does not necessarily work in Shelbyville, Tennessee. Flexibility and accountability and responsibility at the local level gives the greatest accomplishments in education. Yes, rigorous standards. Yes, motivating us, but realizing where we are and where we've been and where we're going. And this may be a little something that hasn't been brought up, but on the handout sheet right there, the graduation rate, the 4-year plus for diploma plus a summer. To me, the 4-year cohort of group of students, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, we are living in a very transient society, and a student is graded on a window of 12 months. Schools are graded on a window of 4 years with a lot of moving parts that we cannot be responsible for, but we are responsible for. So in this equation, I would like to see a 4-year cohort reduced down to the seniors on August 1st of 2023 who will graduate in May of 2024. That gives us something that we can get our hands and head around right here, right now. John and Joey and Jeremy were with us as freshmen. In our transit society, we have no idea where they are today. Give us something that's knowable, doable, consistent, accountable, reflecting the local level's ability as professional educators to monitor and adjust to reach those goals. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for your comments, very thoughtful, and I appreciate you jumping in with those. One of the things that you've said here is about consistency and about the many different systems that we have to measure stuff in education. That is kind of a common theme we've heard about around at these town halls. We know that there are lots of different ways that the state and federal government requires kind of accountability metrics, accountability systems and frameworks. There's a lot of labels. There's a lot of different things that come along with those labels, and those labels mean different things in different circumstances. And so I appreciate that you called that one out in particular, sir. That is something we've heard pretty consistently, but lots of good information in your comment. Next up, we are going to Katrine Stevens. If you would please, I see you right there. We're going to bring you a microphone. If you would please state your name, and I'll start the timer when you start.
Thank you so much. Katrine Stevens, Tullahoma City Schools Superintendent. We have a current school letter grade system in place. K-8 schools have 4 indicators: achievement, growth, English language proficiency, and chronically absent with weights. And high schools have 6 indicators: achievement, growth, English language proficiency, ready, graduate, grad rate, and chronically absent with weights. It seems a bit concerning to be seeking input to change the school letter grading system now, particularly as the 2023 assessment is done, and all have been functioning under the knowledge of the current school letter grade system. Maybe a new system for school letter grades should be put in place following the 2024 results. If not, and this is moving forward, possibly consider a best of scenario where schools can look at the current model and look at the new model and get the best of option related to their grade. Another item for consideration is to remove the chronically absent indicator and potentially replace it with a flat attendance percentage, or move away and go to a different category such as teacher retention. Other items that might be included as other indicators could be industry certifications or ACT. I think that's really important that we do remember our schools want the opportunity to put their best foot forward, and we should be celebrating public schools with the great things happening, and these grades should support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Stevens, for your comments. I appreciate those, and have heard some similar comments around at other town halls about the timing of this engagement process and kind of the why. And I do just want to mention that, of course, our intent, our hope, and our aspiration is that, you know, all schools and all students could get A's all the time. I think that's what we all want for our kids here in Tennessee, and probably other folks want for their kids in other states. When we were getting ready to implement this, we want to make sure that this is going to be as fair as possible, as meaningful as possible. And so just wanted to make sure to say that, and I appreciate everything that you've said here tonight. We are going to go now to our next person for comment. I believe this is a Mr. or Mrs. Coley, C-O-L-E-Y. Does that ring a bell for anyone? Let's see, Fabian, perhaps? First name Fabian? Okay, I'm going to see if I can come back to this person. They've left a Gmail address from Bedford County. Well, we'll have to see if somebody else can read the handwriting. While we do that, I'm going to go to Bill Heath. Sir, I know exactly where you're sitting. We're going to bring you a microphone. If you would please state your name, and I'll start the timer when you start.
All right, thank you. Bill Heath, Superintendent of Schools in Lincoln County. I've been a director of schools, counting a little experience in another state for 24 years, and I've seen a lot over that time. And I've seen us try to build an airplane as we were flying it, if the phrase is right, I remember. I've witnessed state testing come to a screeching halt because of some dump truck over in Chattanooga one time. And I've sort of witnessed the heart and soul of public education sort of being torn out based on school choice. You know, I've seen a lot of good intentions go to Legislative Plaza and come out as bad bills. And I really think this is one. And the reason I think that is because it was told to us that it's more simple and it's easier to understand for parents, this one letter grade. Well, if we've got to develop some formula, and somebody said calculus earlier, then, you know, parents may see a letter grade, but they don't know what made that letter grade. What they do know, though, is the report card they get when their child comes home. We don't stamp at the top, your child is a B student. What we do is we take each area, say in mathematics, your child's a C right now. In English, your child may be an A, and social studies a B, and then that parent can look on there. We ought to be able to do the same thing with our schools. You know, in growth, give us a letter grade. In achievement, give us a letter grade. In attendance, give us a letter grade. And have 4, 5, 6 letter grades, just like a school report. And I know parents will understand that more than this. But I know it's the law, and that's not why you're here tonight. So I'll say this, that if we must develop a formula or develop a way to get to 1 letter grade, we went through a process a few years ago. It seems like it was about a 2-year process where a lot of folks, I know superintendents, put a lot of time and effort into it, and a lot of other people did too, to develop the current formula. So it's somewhat disrespectful to those people to say, hey, we're going to change that formula before we ever implement it. Because it gives the appearance that somebody's looked at the formula and looked at the schools and said, oh, we don't have the right winners or right losers, so we need to change it. So my recommendation is a lot what I heard, like what I heard Katrine say just a moment ago. We've got this current formula. We're obviously developing another formula. Why can't the state, on the state report card, say school XYZ, on the old formula, here's your score, on the new formulas, here's your score, but since we have to have one score, we're going to take the best of, do it for 3 years, evaluate it, take your time. That gives the consistency that the young man, the man spoke to earlier, and that would be my recommendation.
Very good. Right on time. Thank you very much for your comments, sir. I appreciate those. And I will say, you know, kind of the complexity of what happens in a school being represented by a single letter grade is something we have heard along the way at these town halls, that's a challenge. That is what the legislation calls for as well. And so one of the things that we've heard requests for is when you publish a letter grade, a single letter grade as required by the law, could you not also right there next to it include some rating scale, whether it's a A, B, C, D, F or a GPA type rating scale, but some small, you know, kind of sub-indicator, some reporting right alongside that big letter grade with the scores for each of the components. So I appreciate the comments that you made, sir. Next up, we are going to Stacy Jefferson. Stacy, if you would raise your hand, and we will bring a microphone to you. I see you back there. And if you would, just state your name when you get the microphone, and I will start the timer when you start.
How will this be communicated to parents? I think he mentioned on this earlier, but as a parent and as a teacher, I'm just curious, how will this be communicated? Because like he said, if you've got a priority school that's an F or a D, they're not going to understand. And if you have a school that's really high achieving one year and the next year their growth goes down, well, if they're really high achieving, it's going to be harder to reach that growth. So how is that going to be communicated? As a parent, if I see an F, my school is an F, that's going to red flag, right? And that's what these real estate agents use on Zillow and things like that to advertise the schools in that system. And they're not going to publish the grading scale right next to it, right? So there's got to be a consistent way that this is communicated to students and to parents so that we can understand. I mean, I've been studying this for weeks, and here's the old formula, and I've got packets, and I've looked at the calculus. I have a hard time, and I've been teaching 24 years. So how are we going to teach these parents and students and communicate that?
Thank you very much, Ms. Jefferson, for your comments. And the question at the beginning was kind of how will this be communicated? How's the department going to communicate this out to members of the public? I mentioned earlier there is a website. It's called the State Report Card. Excuse me. We update it every year in the fall. It'll go live or launch essentially this fall in November. And so that is where you will see the letter grades published. That's going to be kind of the primary home for the letter grade. On that state report card, if you go to it right now, it includes a lot of data about students in a school or a district, staff, finances, academic achievement, some of those accountability metrics. And so there will be kind of a component of that report card for each school where it says, here is the result of the letter grade system for that school. And again, I'll reiterate kind of the comment about could you publish the letter grade and then publish additional information about what makes up the letter grade? That is a request that we've heard from folks along the way at this town hall, but certainly from our directors of schools as well. The other part I'll talk about is kind of the storytelling and the narrative around what is happening in a school campus that is creating success for students. That is a strength, I think, that our districts have. They know well exactly what's going on in their schools, where the needs are. We want to help make sure that this rating system is able to support some of the decision making, some of the communications that our directors of schools are having in their own local communities. And so it's difficult because it is kind of a one letter grade component as required by law. But we've been having a lot of conversations, and we'll continue to have them, in fact, next week with some of our superintendents, about what are the other things that could go on that report card that help kind of paint the full picture, even if it's not included in the calculation for the letter grade. We've heard some things along the way about well-being type metrics, health of the well-being of students and teachers. Those are things that we can probably find a way to measure, but might not be included in a calculation. It might be included in a calculation as determined by this public town hall, but there are some things that are a little bit more nuanced, and we've heard lots of comments about how can we help on that report card kind of tell a full story of the letter grade as well as the other things that are happening at a campus. Others who would like to chime in, I'm going to go back to that piece of paper and see if we have found, if somebody else could read that name. So we might have had a sign up from someone attending the college fair around the corner. That could be very well. Others who would like to chime in, I'll look for you to go ahead and raise your hand. I see you, sir, in the back, and then we'll come up here to you, sir, in the front. If you would, please, when you get the microphone, just state your name, and I will start the timer when you start.
All right, thank you. I'm Woody Dillahay. I'm with Tullahoma City Schools. I'm a school principal. I would like to see the schools and/or districts have some flexibility, and what I mean by that is let's allow schools to put their best foot forward, and that may not be the same foot for every school. I also think the A through F system is overly simple. When I look at the formulas behind the scenes, it's insanely complicated. I've got a doctorate degree. I've taken statistics. The TVAS formula is with the GHOST data and the multiple models. That is a real challenge for people to understand. We can put a letter grade out there, but what does it mean, and what is the expense or the cost to those people in the school? It's disheartening to the teachers, the administrators, the district leaders that are out there working their tails off only to get an arbitrary letter popped up beside your school that nobody can really explain how it got there or the real methodology mathematically of how we calculated it. The other thing I would say on the subgroups, some of these subgroups seem really small as far as sample size. When we're getting down to that granular school level with subgroups, that sample size seems to be getting smaller and smaller and still counting. I would love to see our state create a system that didn't create winners and losers. Let's allow people to win or lose, but let's don't create the bottom 5% is going to get this, the top 5% is going to get that, because we're essentially creating losers there. I do think, I call it spreadsheet supervision. I do think it's disheartening to teachers and folks that work really hard when just poof, somebody that may or may not have ever been in their school pops a letter or a sad face or a red stop sign or all the different things that we see. I'll end with, I've been trying for about 8 weeks to get in touch. This is not related, but with the State Department over a licensure issue, if I call the licensure office, it literally tells me to go to the website and hangs up on me. If I did that to our parents or to folks calling at my school, that would be unacceptable. So anyway, I would love to see it simplified. I would love to see it not create winners and losers. I would like to see something that makes sense for our students and allows us to serve our kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I've taken note of that licensure comment, and we'll follow up with you directly after this and to make sure we can take care of that licensure issue for you. The other thing I will say, I can tell that you have read our accountability protocol. It is a dense multiple page document with a whole lot of really technical information. And I think that is a little bit of the challenge that we want to work through with our Tennesseans. I mean, we are trying to make a system that can communicate something clearly in a simple way. And so that is a challenge here. And I want to thank you for the comment that you made. The gentleman up here raised his hand next. Sir, if you would please state your name when you get the microphone, I'll start your timer.
All right, my name is John Boutwell. I come from the school board. I was there for 10 years, and now I'm a county commissioner. We've been talking about grading schools based on the outputs of the school, but there seems like there needs to be some consideration given to the inputs. Inputs being, do we have adequate facilities for the system? Are kids in portables? Are there school buildings in good shape? Does that impair learning? Next thing might be the actual funding for the school system that would enable that system to have the right teacher-student ratio, because I think the biggest expense in the school system is labor, and labor is teachers. And so do we have the funding to actually get the right ratio that we need for the type of student body? And, you know, all systems are different. Here in Bedford County, we have probably about 1,200 students that lack English proficiency. And so, you know, that requires a greater number of teachers for the students that we have. And then another measure, which would probably be a little bit hard to quantify, but parental and community support for the schools. If parents are not really interested in their schools and putting effort into their students and into the school system, and likewise the community as well, then it's really not fair to grade a school if they're not getting, you know, the necessary backup or support from the populace. So with that, I think somehow we need to measure the inputs so we can also say, okay, they've got adequate inputs, now we can grade. But if they have inadequate inputs, then it's really not fair to hamstring or grade a school based on what they've got to work with. Okay.
Thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate those, and I think we've heard a little bit about that throughout the town hall. We've heard people talk about kind of the things that might be in a school control. Yes, sir, we'll come to you. It's right behind you, Rika, with a blue shirt, blue polo shirt. But, you know, kind of what can a school actually impact while that student is there for a school year? And you, sir, I think as a county commissioner mentioning facilities and dollars, that certainly makes sense. And we know that looks really, really different from school to school and district to district. But thank you for kind of calling out that component. I wanted to make sure to note that that's consistent. Would you please state your name? Go ahead and get started, sir.
Yeah, my name is Michael Cook. I'm a dad first. I'm a husband second, or maybe vice versa because I'm sitting by my wife. But I'm also a school board member. And a couple of things that I would really be interested in is how will the working groups be created? Is that going to be by invitation? Or are you going to pick those out by volunteers, or how will that work? Secondly, I also would really like to know when the state comes out with these grades that we're going to post on these schools, any of the feedback that you have gotten from these town hall meetings, I would like for that to be included on how these letter grades are created. That we just don't have these town hall meetings and then all of a sudden we go create what we've already set out to create, and none of this is even being considered. Okay, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just being honest with you, okay? I'm a taxpayer too. Secondly, I would like to know, you know, we have a teacher shortage within the entire state of Tennessee. We have a teacher shortage within the entire United States. We're talking about Tennessee right now. So how is it we do all of these things to get people licensed to teach? We say if you've got a degree, we'll put you in a classroom, we'll help you get your license. How are we going to help that situation by putting a big F in front of a school? Everybody in this auditorium knows in their district what type of schools we have in our district. Everybody in here knows that. We don't need a letter grade for it. And so, you know, I would like to know, if we're so concerned about getting the right teachers in the right spots, how do we think putting those grades on schools are going to help? I recently just came back from Florida, and I can't remember what state we drove through, but on the sign out there, is this our intent? On the sign, there was a letter on it. Is that what we're headed towards? Is that what we want to do? I read that charter schools are public schools, so are they going to have the same thing? Is that what we're going to do? So I just really think there's a lot of questions that we would like to have answered as well as we move forward, but I would like you to think about what impact is that going to have on the kids, and is it worth it? That's what I'd like for you to think about.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook, for your comments. I appreciate those. And we've heard similar concerns, particularly on kind of the teacher comment that you made. The other thing I want to make sure to call out, all of the public comment generated by these town halls, the things that go to that email account, things we've got on Twitter or X or whatever the next thing is, it's going to be public. Actually, tomorrow at 10 a.m. you'll see the first batch go up on our website that will represent all of the public town halls from all of the comments from all of the town halls and all emails received to date. We're going to continue to post those as we go about this process, so that as we kind of march through the coming weeks and march towards implementation of this law later this fall, you all can continue to engage. You can see the things that are coming in. You can see the conversations that the working groups are having, actually send more feedback for their kind of further deliberation. So I just want to make sure to mention that we want to be very, very transparent about what is being heard and kind of how our ultimate calculation is arrived at. Others who would like to chime in, feel free to go ahead and raise your hand. I see two right here. We're going to come to the lady in the black sweater, and then we'll come to you, ma'am, right behind her. If you would please state your name, and I'll start your timer.
Tammy Garrett. I'm the superintendent in Bedford County. I want to say that we really don't want to change what we currently have. We feel like that we spent 2.5 years working on this, and we feel like the game is already completed and you changed the rules in the end. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. We really worked with principals to study this accountability model. We have a good handle on it. We have had growth, great growth this year, the first time we've had that good of growth in many years. We are not interested in lowering the percentage, and that's what we've heard, that we are going to lower the percentage of growth and increase the percentage of achievement. So as an educator, I think that is detrimental to areas like ours. We have high poverty, we have high ELL, chronic absenteeism is already in there. If you reduce growth and increase achievement, we know that research shows that achievement is indicative many times and very closely correlated to the family's income. So we feel that if you decrease growth, chronic absenteeism is still on there, then communities like ours will not benefit, but more affluent communities will. And those more affluent communities do not have the struggles that we have in the current teacher retention. In Bedford County, we have about 100 teachers who are going back, who are job embedded, who have a permit. And in one school in particular, a high-risk school, we have 25 teachers on permit in this one school that's a high-risk school. Teachers are overachievers. They want an A. They will not walk in every day to a school that they know there is no way physically possible with the formula and with the demographics that they have that they can get an A. It's going to hurt teacher retention. It will hurt education, and I beg you not to reduce the growth. The growth is important. The growth is important. If a school has a 5 and they come in and maybe they were 5% proficient last year and they're 20%, yes, they deserve a B. Yes, they deserve an A. They don't deserve an F because those teachers work their fannies off to get those kids increasing their proficiency level. So we beg you to consider this year keeping the formula as it is. Let us finish the game that we played already. Don't change the rules. We worked on that formula for 2.5 years, and we don't feel that it is fair for you to change it. The other thing, just make sure that more affluent communities do not benefit from this system over us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Director Garrett. I appreciate I appreciate those comments very much. And we've heard a little bit about that along the way, and particularly the socioeconomic factors that you mentioned, and heard some interesting input actually about kind of when you grow a group of students who has had historically low achievement, if you grow them significantly, is that a way you could generate essentially bonus points or something like that in the system? So we've heard some things about that, and I would encourage you to continue to engage with us. Check out those comments too as we post them tomorrow. I see your hand. We're going to come to you next. If you would, please, ma'am, state your name and I'll start your timer.
Yes, Shanna Boyette, Bedford County Board of Education. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I just kind of really wanted to mimic the shared comments that Dr. Garrett and Board Member Cook also expressed about recruitment and retention at the local level and the flexibility for those. Those aren't just an issue specific to Bedford County. They're statewide, they're nationwide, and what a program implementation like this will do to those efforts. If you all were going to take input and create some sort of model moving forward, I would question the timing of that and when the law was actually written and where we were as a state in 2017, 2018 pre-COVID is not where we're at post-COVID, especially in the world of education. And so I would like those things to be taken into consideration, and really more than take the comments from the public hearings and move forward with an implementation when we're hearing a lot of comments of concern, take those back to the legislators and amend the law. Because the law is what people are questioning right now, and you can definitely go back to legislation and amend that through general session. And I would like to see the Tennessee Department of Education work with our legislators to come up with a law that we feel like in education is more beneficial to address some of the problems that we have concern-wise, not only with the recruitment and the retention efforts, but also to what Ms. Jefferson spoke about earlier, the impact to economic development to rural communities when people are looking to locate and relocate into communities and they research your community. And I just would like to think that Tennessee is better than just putting a specific letter towards a specific school. It sets people up for failure, and I just think that Tennessee is better than that. And I don't believe that that's what the end result is supposed to be for this. So I would just request, rather than moving forward with all of the public comments, you take those back to legislation and see if we can amend the law to work more effectively for our education system. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Boyette, for your comments. And I will take this opportunity just to acknowledge that, and Commissioner said this actually at some of the other town halls that we were at, as we go forward and implement this fall, this is not necessarily one and done, right? There's lots of conversations we intend to have after publication of these letter grades, whether that looks like the Tennessee General Assembly taking action, we'll see. That's something that's kind of in their prerogative in the legislative branch, and we're over here in the executive, but certainly we'll continue conversations about this and other rating systems for schools. Continuous improvement is important, I think, to everybody all the time. Hopefully it's important to everybody all the time. It's certainly important to us. So I just want to assure you of that there. Yes, ma'am, we're going to bring the microphone to you, and I saw another hand come up over here, so we'll come back to that person in just a moment. If you would, when you get the microphone, please state your name, and I'll start the timer when you start.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Fatima Conley, and I would like to speak on the TCAP information for kids that are in the 5th grade to be on the 7th grade level. They were expecting them to score a certain grade to pass. We need to be more concerned about our kids that struggle to read, and how will we help them become on grade level? What are we going to do about that to help the students that are struggling? A letter grade for a school is not my concern, but my concern is finding a solution for students that are not on grade level and testing them 2 grades above.
Thank you very much, Ms. Conley. I think I finally figured out, I was trying to call your name earlier, and I think I said it wrong. Thank you very much for chiming in here. And what you're talking about is essentially proficiency, and that is one of the components that must be included by law, must be included in the calculation for this letter grade, as well as growth. Those are the 2 pieces that must be required. But that's something we've heard from parents along the way. You know, I think when we hear from parents and they say, I want the best for my child, they they assume that the academic content is something that is coming with that child's education every day. And of course, we want our students to achieve and have every opportunity for success. I will say, when we think about accountability systems, and we're getting into the technical space, but federal accountability systems, kind of to the comment earlier, if you are a school in need of improvement, additional funding, additional planning, additional steps are required for a school or district. This particular state law does not contain those next steps in and of itself. And so we've had a lot of internal conversations at the Department of Education about what can we do as an agency to essentially show up to support the schools that need additional support, and to put a bright spotlight and a highlight on the best practices that are working really, really well, so that we can attempt to replicate them in other areas across the state. So thank you very much for your comment, ma'am. Sir, I am remembering you asked a question about the working groups that I just completely did not did not answer. I want to make a point. As we've been going along these town halls, and even via email, we've had people say, hey, I want to be a part of a working group, and have actually kind of signed up to participate. I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that those groups are diverse and bring lots of different perspectives. But if there are folks in the room tonight who want to be involved in part of those working groups, just come find me after this, and we'll take your email down to make sure to invite you to those. Others who would like to chime in, I thought I saw a hand somewhere around in here just a moment ago. I see you way in the back. Yes, ma'am, we're going to bring you a microphone. When the microphone gets to you, if you would state your name and go ahead and get started.
My name is Graciela Arroyo. I was an ESL teacher for 8 years. I'm now currently an assistant principal at the same school. And I just want to really emphasize the importance of our ELL students. We have so many students that have grown in ELL, and we have had students who have accomplished a lot even here at this high school, and have graduated because teachers have taken time to teach them and spend a lot of time understanding where they come from. They're not only affected by a language, but they're affected economically. They have many things going on in their home. And as a former ELL student who didn't have the opportunity to have ESL in the 60s, I see that now we have this, and we could use this to help them grow. We know that achievement is not going to happen. Research already shows you that it takes time to learn the language. So I really want, when this is passed, to really consider that, because in this county we have a high population of ELL, and we also have students who are really not just graduated, but are going on with their lives because they grew, because people took time to teach them. Not just teachers, community, everybody that's been involved. So please consider before you guys make this final decision, and I ask, have some ELL teachers involved in these decisions. Pull from them too, because they could share they're full of wealth of knowledge that they could share with you to help you understand how growth is so important in this county.
Thank you very much for your comments. She's right behind you. Yep. Thank you very much for your comments, ma'am. I appreciate that. And we've heard conversations about this type of thing and this thing exactly in the years of work and conversations that have occurred already about this letter grade and through this public town hall tour. And so I'll thank you for that comment. Thank you for highlighting it here tonight. And I think it's a wonderful suggestion that we bring teachers like you to the table, administrators like you to the table, to ensure that perspective is heard. Others who would like to chime in, I see you down here. We're going to bring a microphone about midway down. If you would state your name when you get the microphone right here. Yep, she's looking for you, Rika, in the pink shirt. If you would please state your name, go ahead and get started when you're ready.
My name is Tristy Bankston. I am a teacher here in Bedford County as well as a parent. And the one thing I'm concerned about is I get achievement. I get that's what we all want to go for. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not our process in this whole mess with getting them there, because some of them are delayed. We do have disabilities in our system. My concern is my kids have to see that TCAP score, and seeing below, seeing approaching, seeing proficient. When are they going to ever feel valued to know that they have at least shown growth? Growth is something they get excited about. They're like, oh, I can make progress. Oh, I can almost get there. If they see that they can only be at grade level and that's our only goal, then they're going to feel defeated. That teacher's going to feel defeated. They're not going to feel like they are going to be able to accomplish through school. It's just an ongoing struggle. I see it in my kids when we have to pass out the TCAP score, my own child. And I don't want her to feel defeated by a test score. I want her to see that she is making progress. It may be a slow progress for some due to economic challenges, due to disabilities, but at least we're moving. So we need to focus more on we're moving, we're making progress, and more than achievement. And I think that needs to be fair for our kids. Our kids need to see that, and they need to feel valued. And just hitting achievement and saying you need to be on grade level, it's a little discouraging for those kids because they're like, am I ever going to get there? I don't have the support system at home. My mom has to work 2 jobs because I can't go home and study my sight words or learn to read every day. We've got to look at everything, and growth is so important for my kids at my school, along with my child at my house. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for your comments. I think I saw another hand over here. Did I see another? Okay, I thought I saw one jump right up just a second ago. I said, well, you've got your hand right up. Yes, sir, you're right there. Please go ahead and get started, and just say your name for me before you start.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Brian Wagner, and I'm going to piggyback off of what Dr. Garrett and Ms. Tracy Bankson, their comment. I'm a proud representative of Harris Middle School. Excitedly, I can say that we were a level 5. Our county was a level 5. That's a huge accomplishment. Yes. Yes, and all of our teachers in our whole district, our teachers, our students, our admin team, they worked extremely hard to ensure that we got the scores that we got. Analyzing our scores, it was at Harris Middle School. It was highly evident the students exceedingly achieved a year's growth. And on the flip side, if you look at our achievement scores didn't look the greatest. You know, I'll even give you an example. 8th grade, 14.4% were proficient. That's low. So if achievement scores counted more than our growth scores, then we probably would have been a level 1 school. Historically, Harris Middle School has always relied on growth scores. I think it's very unrealistic to think we can ensure our students, the scores can go from 20% to 50 to 55% overnight. That's very unrealistic. Our teachers are working hard, vigorously, to ensure our students are getting the best education that they can possibly receive. The teachers, they are thoroughly analyzing data and PLC with other teachers, coaches, our instructional coaches, our admin team. Teachers are having data chats with the students to make sure that they know where they're going. With all that said, having achievement scores counted more than growth scores for a school like us, that would adversely affect us, and I think it would affect our culture, our school culture. We would constantly have huge turnovers because teachers would want to leave and go to another school that they can, have better achievement scores. I think that, there's not a one-size-fit-all, right? Not a one-size-fit-all. Just like students, they learn in different ways. That I believe that schools should be based on schools' individual needs to determine which score should weigh more. So some schools could benefit more from the growth scores, whereas other schools can benefit more from the proficiency scores. So I think it should be based upon the individual school's needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wagner. I appreciate your comments, and thank you for chiming in. I want to look for others who would like to have some comment. I'm going to call attention to the time I see you, Mr. Heath. We're going to bring you back the microphone, Director Heath, right here in the middle. Yes. Oh, did we have one here? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. We'll go to you. I'm so sorry. I did not see your hand. We'll come to you now, and then we'll come back to you, sir. If you would please state your name and go ahead and get started.
My name is Lucy Martinez Taylor. I am Mexican American. Never been to Mexico. I'm a second generation. I have worked for the school system for numerous years. When the Hispanics first started coming to Shelbyville, Bedford County, not with this one, but I worked with the city and county because of the children coming and teaching them. I personally feel like the children that are being tested, that are coming into our schools that are new, are hurting our scores. I believe that those children should be given a couple years, 2-3 years, to be able to pick up the language and be able to succeed. We do know that, and I'm sure Ms. Gracie can agree on this, that these children that are bilingual By the time 2-3 years, many of them exceed because they're able to speak 2 languages. I think it hurts our school system, and being in Bedford County for 43 years, it hurts our school system to test children that are coming in that have no knowledge of the English language. We are going to continue to get more children. We're seeing them coming into the schools. And I think the state doing this and bringing down our scores on our schools, I don't think it's good. So, but that's my opinion.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. I appreciate the comments. We're going to go now to Director Heath in the pink shirt, and we're going to come back over here. Yes, sir. Please say your name for me one more time.
Bill Heath, Lincoln County Schools. Just a couple of comments. One is chronic absenteeism. I know that's been said a few times. We have such little control over that, and you know, that's a parent decision, and there's so many reasons kids are absent that they, with illnesses and all, it's hard to swallow that we have to take that as a part of our evaluation of a school. We know we want kids in school, but it's just tough. Another thing is on the working groups, I would ask that there be some intentionality in making sure the diversity is there in many aspects. I'm thinking about, I'm going to use an example, no offense to anybody if you're a real estate agent, but if you're a real estate agent in a very affluent community, you're going to want certain things on that school report card because you want to be able to say you're selling houses in a level A or A-rated school district or school. So, you know, I hope there's some intentionality in that diversity. And then there's several other states, 20 or so, that already have this in place. I think Florida maybe was 1999 is when they started, and I know they've all obviously had growing pains going through this process. So will the department ever or be able to put out some documents on what each of these states have learned, what they started with, what they changed, why they changed, and the dynamics of all of that? Because I know, just researching this a little bit in the last day or two, I saw even in Texas the Ready Graduate is changing, you know, substantially. And of course, one of the things I read was because too many schools were getting good scores on it. I don't know that that's true, but that was one of the things I read. So I would hope that the department could put something out on what's been learned in other places, so we'd have a chance to look through that also. And the last thing is just a comment. You know, we tell our teachers the best that we can that on the evaluation system, a 3 is rock solid. Teachers will not settle for a 3. They want to be a 5. Same thing's going to happen with the schools. If you say a school is a C-level school, it's going to feel like a failure to everybody in that school. It's going to feel like a failure in a lot of ways. So I just encourage you to be careful as you put this in place. And again, I will speak up for the old formula, the new formula, and the best of, if we've got to go that route.
Thank you very much, Director Heath. Rika, we're coming all the way down up front here. He's standing up waiting on you. Thank you, Director Heath, for your comments. And if you would please state your name, sir, and go ahead and get started when you're ready.
Tim Harwell, Assistant Superintendent, Bedford County Schools. I'm going to echo some of the things that some people have already said in regards to proficiency. And this is just a comment and a question at the end. Proficiency, you know, we went through a stage in the state of Tennessee where the standards were consistently changing. It felt that way. And it has been a while since our standards have changed significantly. Since they have changed, since that last adjustment, I always look at the state proficiency levels across the board. If you look at all the content levels that are assessed in the state of Tennessee, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe there's any tested content that's above 50% proficient. That's a problem. I feel that part of the problem is the assessment that we give our students, whether it be the TCAP or the EOC. Are there any conversations at the state level at looking how we assess our students? Because we've been stagnant in proficiency for quite some time. It's not because of our teachers. They are doing their best with the resources that they have. It's not our school administrators. What is the state doing in looking at maybe adjusting the assessment?
Thank you very much, Mr. Harwell, for your comments, and I will talk to that just a little bit. Oh, goodness. I will speak to that just a little bit. So, yes, we do provide the TCAP assessment every year and the end-of-course assessments for the older grade kids. TCAP is actually a very expensive test to develop. And when I mean expensive to develop, I mean actual questions on there. And of course, our state academic standards are developed by our Tennessee teachers and Tennesseans like you and I. I think when we want to set high expectations for children, we all want our children to be able to learn and read and write on grade level and be able to be successful, or if they are not yet there, help support them towards that end. The TCAP assessment is the annual assessment that all students take, and so it's kind of the best comparison tool that is available. It's also required in state and federal law, but there are always conversations about how to improve the validity, the reliability of the assessments that we're doing, whether it's TCAP or some other assessment, but that is something that we pay a lot of attention to and do our very best attempt to do very diligent work there. Others who would like to chime in, look for your hand to come up and we will bring you a microphone. I also want to thank this group deeply. It is 6:42 and y'all have been keeping the conversation going, so thank you very much for chiming in. Others who would like to provide some comment, I'll look for you just to raise your hand. We'll bring you the microphone. We're looking for your input on an A through F letter grade system. I see we've got some new folks who arrived in the back. Just to give you a quick example, when we put out a letter grade system later this fall, it will generate A, B, C, D, or F ratings for our schools, and we're looking for input on what that calculation should include, should represent. What are the things that we want to put in a calculation that then generates A, B, C, D, or F for schools? Others who would like to chime in, feel free to go ahead and raise your hand. We'll bring the microphone to you. I see you right here. We're going to hand you the microphone, sir. If you would, please state your name for me again.
Glenn Forsey, Bedford County. Politically, this is a loaded question. What happens if this whole thing just collapses like other things have in the past? Doesn't seem to have a whole lot of traction on the grassroots level. I think the intent is good, but the practicality is not there. So when does the Department of Education tell the politicians, hey, this is not going to work?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Forsey. This is a law. This is a state law that was passed and went into effect after votes by our Tennessee General Assembly. As I mentioned, in the executive branch, we're a state agency, an administrative agency charged to implement that law. When I mentioned the working groups, we intend to invite legislators to participate in that, so they will be in the same conversations that folks like you would be in a part of. And certainly I know our legislators and folks in the legislative branch, even their staffers, are very interested in how this plays out, and are also very, very interested in making sure there is some kind of rating system that conveys information to parents and families in a clear, fair, meaningful way. And of course, we work with our members in the General Assembly regularly. We will do so on this topic and others as they request. But our job is to implement the law, and that's what we're here to talk to you about, is how the best way to do that is. We've got one right here. I see. Would you say your name for me again, sir, please?
Again, it's John Boutwell, Bedford County. I just got a quick comment. You know, it would probably be good if the legislature would have these town halls before they pass the legislation. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you very much for your comment. Others who would like to chime in, we're interested in your input for the calculation that'll generate A, B, C, D, or F as we move forward to implement for the first time this fall. We're interested in hearing from you what those components should be. That's a cell phone. Okay. Everybody looked around with concern for a moment. Just a cell phone ringer, no big deal. But others who would like to provide some input for us when we're thinking about going forward and implementing this law and developing a calculation, what are the components that should be included in that A through F letter grade system? You see some of the examples. If we can go back one slide, you can see some of the examples up here on the screen that we've talked about before. Other things that might jump to mind. I want to hear from you. feel free to go ahead and raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone to you. Other thoughts about the components of a calculation? Maybe you even have thoughts about prioritization. Yes, ma'am, I see. We're going to bring you the microphone. If you would state your name, go ahead and get started when you're ready.
I'm Teresa Rose, Director of Attendance, Data, and Accountability for Bedford County Schools. As the attendance director, chronic absenteeism is a part of this, and chronically absent really doesn't, most people don't understand it because it includes both excused and unexcused absences. Where in fact, you know, if a student's sick and out of school for 5 days, 10 days because they have COVID, that should not count against us, first of all. Chronically absent should only be truancy issues that students have, not based on them being sick, going to their psychologist, being counseled by different people. Those absences count in chronic absenteeism as well. That's something that needs to be looked at. Secondly, our school system has 9,000 students in it. Of those 9,000 students, 2,700 of those students are Hispanic. That's 30%. We get students on a daily basis from Guatemala, from Mexico, from Honduras, from multiple out-of-country places that come to our school system and have been here for 1 year, 2 years, and they're counting as far as achievement goes. We definitely need to consider in keeping the formula the same as what it's been and counting growth more than achievement. Secondly, on that, I mean, I have students this year that were put into the 10th grade cohort that have been in our school system for 1 year, for 3 months, for 1 month, and they ended up on that cohort because they didn't take the ELA 2 test or a math test, and they've only been here for a few months and don't speak English. How are they expected to take that test and pass it when they haven't been in this country? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, and I will share the component of the comment that you made about chronic absenteeism is one we've heard actually a good bit, and it's kind of the difference between an unexcused or excused absence being a part of a calculation like this. The other thing I want to mention, the 10th grade cohort comment, that is something we have also heard about, not necessarily as much as part of these town halls, but it is very related to federal accountability systems versus the state law that we're talking about here today. And there are some changes that have happened in the last year as it relates to the U.S. Department of Education's approval of Tennessee's plans. And so that's over there in kind of that federal space. But I appreciate the comment regardless, and appreciate your comments on the A through F system as well. Others who would, I see you way in the back. Yes, sir, we're going to bring you the microphone. Give us just a minute. And when the microphone gets to you, if you would please state your name, and then I'll start the timer when you start.
Sure, I'm Chad Fletcher. I'm Federal Program Supervisor here in Bedford County. A couple of things I just want to say very quickly. First of all, you know, the idea of an A through F system is nothing new. That comes to us from Mount Holyoke back in 1887. So that idea has been around, and I think we all understand what each of those letters mean. But as I'm sitting here listening to all of my colleagues and friends here tonight, the thing that keeps resonating with me is the word fairness. You know, I don't think anybody here is against us being accountable as school system folks. I don't think there's anyone here who is opposed to letting our communities know the work that we do with students. But, you know, my son, for instance, I have a 12-year-old, he's got Tourette's. I expect his school to deal with him differently and individually based on his needs, because that's what's fair for him. And each of our school systems across this great state is very different. We look a whole lot different in Shelbyville than they do in Shelby County. And trying to force a one-size-fits-all plan on the entirety of our state, honestly, it's going to hurt a lot of our schools from the aspect of not just the work that our teachers are doing, but I'm thinking about my kid. My kid works hard every day. He does his homework. He tries. He gives his very best effort. And if at the end of the year his school ends up being an F school, what's the point in trying anymore? What have you done to that kid? What have you done to my kid? What have you done to the other kids across the state? It's not about us trying to shuck off or be adverse to being accountable. We're 100% willing to be accountable. But let's not change the rules in the middle of the game. You know, you can't practice football and then go out and play a basketball game. And if we know what the rules are on the front end, we'll play all day. But let's don't change the rules once we get into the game itself.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Fletcher. I appreciate your comments. And I will say, I mean, the timing is challenging. I think it's challenging for all of us, and we recognize that. One thing I also will point out, I mean, there are two components that must be required in the calculation, achievement and growth. And so those are two goals that we know we can be pursuing right now. And as we work through this, well, at the end of this, there will be the end of the town hall series, but as we work through the next steps kind of in the working group section, we will make sure to really be transparent about those other indicators that folks have commented on that kind of rise to the top, and you'll be able to continue to engage with us there. But we do know that academic achievement and that growth component are some goals that will stay consistent. Others who would like to chime in, we've got about 10 minutes, actually less than 10 minutes left in the town hall, so I want to make sure if you've been thinking about chiming in that you have an opportunity to do so tonight. Feel free to just raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone to you. Interested to hear your input on an A, B, C, D, F calculation and what could be included or should be included in that calculation. Others who want to chime in, go ahead and raise your hand. Doing the teaching waiting time just a little bit longer than a teacher probably would. I do want to be respectful of the time that you all have donated and volunteered tonight to come and be a part of this conversation. So any other folks who want to chime in and contribute a comment, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring the microphone to you. Yeah, I'm looking for hands. I'm going to do a last call for comment for folks in the room. Anyone else who would like to chime in tonight? This is your moment. Someone could be officially the last commenter of all the town halls, so that could be kind of cool. All right. Yeah. Oh, yep. You're going to do it. All right. Come on down here. Come on down here, Rika. We'll bring you the mic. Move we adjourn was the final comment. All right. I think we will do that, sir. Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Forsey. I want to thank you all for your time this evening. And before you stand up, I want to go to the last slide and show you that email address that I've been referencing. It's up here for you, schoollettergrades@tnedu.gov. You can email us anytime. You can email us more than once if you would like to. Again, you'll see some of that public comment go live tomorrow for the first time. You'll see some of that continue to get posted. But really, really want you to be involved in this conversation. So please engage with us through that email account, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the inbox. But otherwise, appreciate your time this evening. We'll talk to you soon.